I am Tatiana Sanchez Rodriguez from Universidad de las Palmas de Gran Canaria, and today I'd like to present a research titled Esports in the ESL Classroom. Can they help students overcome language transfer issues? Tutored and revised by my thesis director, Maria Victoria Dominguez Rodriguez. The purpose of this presentation is to prove esports as a valuable teaching and learning tool to help students overcome the language transfer issues. My presentation is divided into 5 parts. I'll start with the justification, then I'll look at materials and methods, including the study group, methods and instruments and data collection. Next, the results, going through task, performance and outcomes, conclusion, and finally, references. Let me begin by contextualizing our research. In 2008, the government of Canary Islands passed a law by which English was to be incorporated compulsorily into the public university curricula. Different subjects in all official degrees were to be taught in English. The instrumental purposes are to teach students technical and scientific vocabulary to face the upcoming changes in the professional world. The universities could adopt a dual approach to cover at least 6 credits, including language-specific subjects in their study plans, as in the case of the degree Modern Languages at the Universidad de las Palmas de Gran Canaria, or adopting a CLIL approach, in which non-linguistic subjects were taught in English and the students pre-required at least a B1 level of English, as in the degree in Labor Relations and Human Resources. Besides, in the case of Universidad de las Palmas de Gran Canaria, all students needed to present a B1 level certificate to graduate, either obtained during the university studies or issued by Cambridge English Qualifications or any official school of languages. But from 2019 onwards, it is no longer necessary except when English-focused subjects are compulsory part of the curriculum. This decision has somehow affected the students' instrumental motivation and influenced on their learning process and overall results in ESP subjects, especially when they are not able to see its real utility beyond the classroom. Not needing a B1 level certificate in English to graduate implies a gradual isolation from the foreign language, which is not seen relevant in certain degrees, and this collides with the intention of giving an integral formation to students and tools for long life learning and insertion in the job market. The incorporation of new English-based subjects into university curricula, as well as the integration of CLIL into the classroom, has brought about debate about the problems and drawbacks it may convey for teachers and students alike. In our experience, the incorporation of specific subjects to teach technical and scientific vocabulary in public university degrees in the Canary Islands showed that most students at this formal education level often go through difficulties to acquire, develop and put into practice their communicative competence in LT. This is due mainly to the fact that they usually have very limited background language knowledge, so there is an urgent need to motivate them to help them overcome any obstacle when expressing themselves in English. Intrinsic motivation, therefore, is a key aspect that must be taken as a priority in this context. In this paper, we will focus on the use of esports in an ESP course for computer engineering as a motivating asset to help tertiary-level students overcome one of the most common struggles for Spanish learners of English, language transfer issues. This leads me to my next point, which is materials and methods. The study group selected included 32 students taking Técnicas de Comunicación para la Ingeniería 2. During the academic year 2018-2019. This is a compulsory subject in the degree in computer engineering at the Universidad de las Palmas de Gran Canaria. In particular, we focused on the students enrolled in this subject for the second time, so we could compare the results they obtained the first time and their results the second time, when esports were introduced in our sessions as an innovative twist to achieve extra motivation. Thus, our study group was further reduced to 10 students, including 8 males and 2 females, aged between 19 and 25 years old. All were Spanish native speakers, and they had a no higher A2 level of English. By the initial assessment at the beginning of the course to check their previous English language knowledge, we detected major problem with vocabulary affecting their productive and receptive skills, also showing the motivation and willingness to learn English. Let's now turn to methods and instruments. The introduction of esports in the classroom aims at involving students in the use of motivated, authentic material that may be helpful to acquire and develop their communicative competence in English, as well as to effectively use a technical computer engineering related vocabulary for tasks. A series of esports can be used as content resource from which the students create different types of written and oral texts related to the field of computer engineering, providing them with a specialized lexicon and samples of communicative discourse that may enhance their language skills. This subject is taught weekly in 2-hour sessions divided into theory and practice. We adopted a communicative approach to introduce esports in some sessions, thus focusing on how to use the language to communicate meaning and the deployment of natural strategies for language acquisition. This allowed us achieving certain flexibility of learning goals and tasks since students could move at their own pace. To measure the effectiveness of esports to help the students overcome the language transfer issues detected initially, we analyzed the students' performance and to what extent they achieved the learning objectives stated during the course. For the purpose, we compared the results obtained in the initial reading test with those of a final exam. I'd now like to move on to the next part, data collection. At the beginning of a course, we perform initial assessment through a reading test on graphic arts hierarchy that helped to check the students' understanding of technical vocabulary. The results indicated that 6 out of 10 in the study group had failed to find the corresponding term in English due to language interference with L1. The main issue observed was negative lexical interference, that is, the influence resulting from similarities and differences between the target language and any other language that has been previously acquired by the learner. As a way to remedy this lack of technical vocabulary, we designed a task including the use of esports as source material. The objective was to help students overcome the language transfer issues detected by working on exercises that facilitated the acquisition of specific technical vocabulary. In the final exam, we checked whether the study group had improved or not in their overall language skills and technical vocabulary. Turning our attention now to results, we will discuss the task performance and the outcomes. The task design consisted firstly on asking students to get information about the latest graphic cards in current use, and then gather descriptions of colors, shapes, and brightness of characters and scenarios in the game Battlefield, which belongs to the esports universe nowadays. That information was only accessible if the students actually played in a given scenario and using specific characters, so they had to get actively involved in the game. For the presentation of their findings, the students were allowed to deploy any means that could be used in the classroom. To perform in front of their classmates, the students had to find out the specific vocabulary needed to describe graphic cards beforehand. During data presentation, they showed domain of technical words and expressions like expansion ports, frames, multiple monitor connectivity, onboard, built-in, etc. Compared to their initial reading test results, there was no L1 interference because they had looked for and understood the concepts to surf on the internet and locate relevant information from specialized web pages and publications on the latest graphic cards. The outcomes. The evaluation criteria in this subject stipulate that the final exam carries a 60% of the total grade. The other 40% comes from oral presentations and class attendance. The final exam included 3 skill-based sections: grammar, reading, and writing. The reading included a reading comprehension exercise about a research paper dealing with the topic that has been worked on during the course, voice search for development. The students were instructed to read the text carefully and perform 2 exercises. First, to identify the different parts of a scientific paper by labeling the sections, and second, to find synonyms and antonyms for some words of a text. The latter was included to specifically observe whether language transfer issues had been overcome or not by the end of the course. Generally speaking, these 10 students showed greater understanding of specialized text and could point out its different sections, since they had read several articles while researching about graphic cards. It's interesting to note that 7 out of 10 students passed the second exercise without any problem. The other 3 just failed in 1 or 2 words. Besides, the actions of searching, reading, and presenting oral information thematically related to the topics covered in our sessions also improved students' performance in the use of English and writing sections. Yet, we may say that they showed difficulties in adjusting style and register to write a successful application letter for a company asking for a programmer position. So, the conclusions drawn from our research indicate that the inclusion of esports in an ESP course for computer engineering can turn out a tool to enhance the students' motivation and involve them in a challenging teaching-learning process in higher education contexts. In this sense, esports can be exploited for controlled language acquisition, that is, having in mind which kind of information is going to be extracted from the gaming universe. However, given that our findings are based on a limited number of subjects, the results should be treated cautiously. We may state that tasks and exercises that draw new sports may be motivating to our study group, yet variables like age or interests are indeed irrelevant at this point and must be taken into account when saying that they may help to fix language transfer issues. All in all, as a consequence of using esports as source material for their oral presentations, the students in our study group commonly self-corrected language transfer mistakes when speaking technically, probably in imitation of patterns and words they had come across in their search for information. Register and style mistakes in their written productions could be partly due to the influence of esports, whose forums, live chats, live streaming sessions are all informal, getting the students used to expressing themselves in informal register and style also by imitation. However, it seems that by exposing computer engineering students to authentic material via esports, we may automatically correct language transfer issues like negative errors, especially if greater exposure and context is promoted. Thank you all for listening. Here you'll find a list of references used for this research. It's been a pleasure to present our study at this Innovation in Language Learning Conference 2019.